All right. Hello, everybody. As you know, I am Sue Kratz. My business partner, Katie, and I run both the Heartland Fabricare Association and Safety and Environmental Compliance Consultants. One of the most important things that we run across in our visits are HAZCOM violations. HAZCOM is the hazardous communication standard that OSHA issued that basically deals with letting your employees know what hazardous materials they might work with. And you might say, oh, I'm a green cleaner. I don't have any hazardous chemicals in my business. However, anything that is a chemical can become hazardous if used inappropriately. So we always tell them things like hand sanitizer, Windex, all kinds of household chemicals can be considered to be hazardous chemicals. You might think that that's kind of silly, but if someone ingests their hand sanitizer, that could be very hazardous. Likewise, if they decide to drink some toilet bowl cleaner, that also would be hazardous. So we have to allow all employees to know that they are exposed to hazardous chemicals. And like I say, it's not just the dry cleaning chemicals that you might think of, but every possible chemical that you have in your facility. So number one, hazard communication standard violation is missing or inadequate written hazard communication program. If you have 10 or more employees, you are required to have a written hazard communication policy that tells your employees how you intend to meet all the regulations regarding labeling of chemicals, safety data sheets that are required to be on hand, and how you intend to cover employee information and training. That is probably the biggest problem that OSHA sends violations for. And you want to make sure that you have a comprehensive hazard communication written program. It can be done either on paper or electronically or both. But if you have an electronic one, you do have to have it backed up, and it has to be available upon request by employees or OSHA if they happen to come and visit you. So we'll move on to number two, which is missing or inadequate measures to provide hazard information or training to employees. So one of the things that we do is before a new hire even starts, they are supposed to be trained in the hazard communication and employee right to know standards. That means they have to know that they are exposed to hazardous chemicals. They have to know that all bottles, cans, anything that contains a chemical must be labeled, and it has to have the name of the company that sells the product, or excuse me, produces the product, their address, phone number, and then also tell you all the hazardous information about that specific chemical and the remedies in case something happens where somebody ingests the chemical or gets it on their skin or gets it in their eyes or whatever the cause is. They have to know that they have an opportunity to get that taken care of, and you have to have that written into your policy. We do written training, like I say, before an employee even starts their first day. We get on the phone with the employer and the new hire, and we go through all those things as well as bloodborne pathogen training and lockout tagout. And those are all important things that your employees will be expected to handle. So we can go to the next. Oh, that's wrong. That went the wrong way. There we go. That's just informational. I'm going to skip right over that slide. So Number 3 failure is the failure to make safety data sheets readily accessible to employees. If you can see the photo on the left of this screen, that's an SDS book. In 2017, OSHA and all the other regulatory people got together and decided it was no longer going to be the material safety data sheets. Now it's known as only the SDS or safety data sheets. And they came up with standardized symbols and coding and everything so that everyone's on the same page about hazardous chemicals. Now, you should have a safety data sheet book on the premises at every plant that you might operate that has an SDS for every single chemical in your facility. Again, even if you run to Walmart and pick up a bottle of hand sanitizer, you have to have an SDS in your book for that particular chemical. If you go to the hardware store and pick up paint or Rust-Oleum or 3-in-1 oil or anything like that. Again, you need to have an SDS for every one of those chemicals in that book. The employees need to know where those books are kept. They should be in a highly accessible area so that everyone can get to them if they suddenly get something in their eyes or on their skin and they don't know what to do. They can find the SDS and that will tell them on there. They need to either go to the emergency room, use the eye wash station, or whatever the particular remedy is for that chemical. And it's even helpful. We have some clients who have more than one SDS book at their premises. If it's a large facility, they might have one in the dry cleaning area and one in the laundry area if they're quite separate from each other. But either way, any chemical has to be included in there, and those books have to be kept up to date. What we've recently learned is that not only do they have to be kept up to date, but if you discontinue using any chemicals, you have to maintain that SDS for that chemical for 30 years. So even if you discontinue using a chemical, keep the SDS in a book that is discontinued chemicals or something, because if someone in 25 years gets sick and says it's because you were using this particular chemical when they worked there, you have to have proof that they had access to that SDS and what that SDS states. So, okay, next topic is the failure to maintain SDS for each hazardous chemical. We do recommend that periodically you go through all your chemicals and make sure that what's in your book is what's on your shelf and vice versa. The first time we see a customer, we will do a detailed chemical inventory and then create an SDS for you based on that inventory. But you will have to maintain that inventory, like I say, either once a year or as you purchase new chemicals, you'll want to get an SDS and put them in your book. So, number 5, the failure to include product or identifier or general information on the labels. So if you can see this picture on the right, that is from one of our customers. And you might notice there are no labels on some of those bottles. So recently, I was in a dry cleaning facility where there were 2 spotters and they were side by side. And between them, they had a clear plastic cup that had a clear liquid in it. And so I asked them if that was some water and if I could have some of it. And they both told me that if I tried to drink that, I'd probably die because it was actually some type of chemical mixture that they had. And unfortunately, that's not just me. If anybody saw a glass of what they thought was water sitting there, they might easily do the same thing and take a drink, and that could be fatal or at least make you very sick. So every single bottle that you put a chemical into has to have a label on it that states what that chemical is. Now, those bottles don't have to have all the same information on them that the, excuse me, the original product has on the label, but they do have to at least say it is Targo, it is whatever the particular chemical is that's in it. Even if you have a spray bottle with just water in it, that bottle needs to be labeled as water so that anybody who picks it up will know that that's what's in that container. That's probably the biggest failure that we see on a regular basis in almost every dry cleaner that we visit. And therefore, that is one of the biggest things that OSHA looks for when they come into a facility. And those fines can add up real quickly because it's not per occurrence that they'll fine you. It will be per bottle that's not labeled that they'll be fining you for. So, excuse me 1 second. Okay. This is going real quick. I hope y'all don't mind. This next one is failure to provide complete information on labels of shipped containers. So if you get a container of your favorite solvent or spotting chemical, and it doesn't have the information on it already, you are responsible for getting that information from the supplier and putting that information on a label on the container. And in this case, it does have to have all of the identifiers, the product identifier, a signal word, which is fire, inhalation, explosive, things like that. It has to have the hazard statement stating that that is a hazardous chemical and why. The pictogram that they've come up with that has the diagonal or a diamond shaped pattern. One part of it is red, one is yellow, one is black, one is blue, and they all are, they all have their own specific meanings. Red obviously is for if the chemical is flammable. And then it will have a hazard rating between 0 and 4, with 0 being the least likely to cause a problem and 4 the most likely. So if you see, for instance, on the fire symbol that there's a 4, you know that that is a highly flammable chemical. But anyway, that's the pictogram, that diamond-shaped thing. And then any precautionary statements that the manufacturer has issued for that, and the name, address, phone number of the chemical manufacturer. And again, that is for anything that you get from a supplier. You're going to want to have that information. It should already be printed on there, but sometimes they come without that information, and that is your responsibility to get it on the container then. Number 7, failure to, I can't even read this because Katey, can you read that for me? Because I have something blocking it.
Failure to maintain legible workplace labels or other forms of warning.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so all those labels that we put on spray bottles and stuff, after you use them for a while, either the chemical will start to erode the label, or just the day-to-day handling of that bottle will start to erode the labeling. So you have to make sure that those labels stay consistent, that you can always read what it states on there is in the bottle. We've had questions about, do the bottles need to be in Spanish or another language as well as English? And OSHA only requires that they be in English. You can always add additional languages onto them, but you must always have the English language on there as well. You can't put Spanish on there and forget to put English on there as well. So that is that. So you're probably going to wonder, so what is this going to cost me if OSHA comes in and audits me? So for these particular violations, the first one, the hazard communication standard that we're talking about. In 2024, as you can see, OSHA issued 2,800 violations for that, with penalties up to it adding up to 4,888,000, et cetera, which is an average 1,695 per violation. Doesn't sound like much, but if you have 3 bottles that are not labeled, and you have 4 employees who are not trained, and you don't have a hazardous communication written program, suddenly you're looking at a whole lot of money. They add up quickly. So it is worth your while to make sure you have all those things on hand for the hazard communication standard. Respiratory protection is another one that might affect your workers, and that is the number 4 OSHA violation in 2024. That one was only 2,470 violations for a total of 4,382,000, an average of $1,700 per violation. Once again, that's if you ask your people to wear a respirator, or you think they need to wear a mask when they are working with certain chemicals, you need to have signage. You need to have the masks available for people. If you don't, and they are subjected to chemical inhalation, again, you're going to get a fine, and it adds up. If you've got 4 people working in a particular area with those chemicals, you're going to get 4 fines. So be very careful with that one.
And what I added actually in the chat section is those are the numbers from 2024. As of January 1st of 2025, OSHA actually increased their fine amount. And so that average will go up in 2025. We just don't have those numbers as we are not done with the year. But OSHA fines can have penalties ranging up to $16,550 for a serious or other than serious violation, and up to 165,514 for a willing or willful or repeated violation. So if you've repeated a violation over and over and over and over, or not changed it, you're looking at well over $100,000 for a single violation.
Well, and if you're aware that there is a problem, if an employee has complained about it, or a customer has tripped over a mat in your facility and that's been an issue, you're aware of it, and then OSHA comes in and finds out that you've been aware of it, that is a serious violation on their part. So you have to be extremely diligent in taking care of those things as they arise. So the 5th most common violation is in the lockout tagout. And while you also think this may not apply to your employees, if you are going to have a machine down while you're having it repaired, it needs to have a lock or tag on it saying, do not use this. It needs to be disconnected from a power source. And all the employees need to be informed that that equipment is not to be used. It's extremely important because we don't want anybody to get hurt. I mean, that's the whole reason for OSHA, is to try and have as few injuries and things as possible. So you'll want to make sure that you do have a written lockout tagout program, and inform all your employees about what that is, because obviously they cannot be required to follow the policy if there is no written policy for them to follow. Number 10, and this is a big one in our business as well. General machine guarding. That was number 10 on OSHA's top 10 list of violations. We go into plants all the time to inspect and find that repairs have been done to a piece of equipment, but the guarding was never put back on the machine. That is a big one. That one, as you can see, that one is an average $8,500 per violation, because that is the easiest way for someone to get hurt, is by not putting the guards back on and having someone stick their hand into the back of the machine and wondering why it hurts. So you want to make very sure that once all repairs are completed, you're putting the guards back on the machine. The other thing that we encounter a lot, and you know this as dry cleaners, is ear protection. That's not on their top 10, but if your ambient noise is more than 85 decibels around a piece of equipment when it's running, you are required to provide your employees with ear protection. It can either be earphones or earplugs. Earplugs are really reasonably priced, and for the fine that you would get for not having that, it is just not worth it to not give them to your employees. We don't want anybody losing their hearing because they worked for you. So, well, that's about all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
All of these are things that we run into on a very regular basis. And that lockout, tagout, and machine guarding also goes toward things that are no longer in use in a facility. So if you have a piece of equipment that you're no longer using, you need to clearly mark that it is not in use. Because if there is something off of it and OSHA comes in, that can be a point of fine and violation for you. Again, with any of the chemicals, a lot of people offer samples. Do not take samples unless they also give you an SDS sheet, because even if it's a sample size product, you have to have the SDS. A lot of our people who we train who work at the counter, when we ask them, do you work around hazardous chemicals? They immediately say no. They say, absolutely not. I do not. And I'm like, well, do you have hand sanitizer at your front desk? And they say, yes. And then I tell them a story of how we had to have hand sanitizer banned at a camp I worked at because kids were slathering it on their body until they got drunk. That is a hazardous chemical when it is used inappropriately. So it's one of those things where even if you don't think it's something that it's like a common sense chemical where you don't drink hand sanitizer, or you don't drink the bottle of Windex. I trained 2 people this past month who had accidentally drank bleach. 2 people this past month because they didn't have a labeled container and they thought it was water. Like, that's wild. So all of these OSHA policies, again, seem like very common sense. However, the saying is OSHA policies are written in blood. The reason they exist is because someone got hurt. Like, rules don't exist just because or to cause you extra headache. It's because somebody died or was injured. So they're there to protect you, there to protect your business. And everyone just needs to stay safe. So before you even put somebody on the floor for their first assignment, before you put them behind a desk, you need to train them in all of the things. That is not 2 hours into their job. That is not 24 hours, 3 weeks. There is not a grace period. If they get injured 2 hours into their job and file for workman's comp, or write to OSHA and say they weren't trained and now they've gotten hurt, that's on you. So that's always why we're like, call, get us in there or do your training immediately. So I just wanted to follow that up with a lot of real life examples just from this month alone.
One of the first things that OSHA will ask you for if they come in is to see your training documentation.
Yeah.
That has to be a written document that has the employees sign off on it. So if you are doing training, that's great, but make sure it's in writing and make sure they have signed it and you have it available for OSHA to see as soon as they walk in the door.
Yeah. Steve, did you have a question?
I did. How many, if you might not know the answer to this, I'm just curious, how many dry cleaners have had OSHA come in and inspect them?
Well, we know of at least 2 or 3 last year that are now our customers because of that.
Okay.
So, the idea is become our customer before
You
OSHA
have a
comes to
problem.
see you. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it usually because someone reports you? Then
Yes.
they're not just out randomly.
They
Yeah, it'd
don't
be
have the
impossible.
staff to go out and randomly audit people.
Right.
It usually takes a complaint from either an employee or a customer.
Right. Yeah. Yep. They can file one too.
Yep. Or one of your managers. I mean, you might think they're working for you. They are, but they also will not have a problem calling OSHA if they find a situation that is dangerous that the owner hasn't done anything about.
Right. Yeah. And you don't respond to it.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing. Like, a lot of times, if you do end up with an OSHA violation or fine, there are ways to get that lowered. However, if you have had a prior incident and you did not fix the thing and you get inspected a second time or get a second letter, those things will not go away. Those violations, those fines do not go away. Then it becomes willful and repetitive, which means your fines go up 10x.
Wow.
Yes. We actually had one of our customers who had a client, not a client, an employee who was disgruntled, who made some really, really big claims. And so we got to help them out there.
Yep.
Any other questions? Anything in particular that we haven't covered? The big thing is just write it down, write it out, write down all your policies, have everyone sign off. And every single year, you have to do retraining on topics as well. So those things include heat stress and harassment policies and chemical handling and where to go in case of a fire and where to go in case of a weather emergency, which is different state to state what that emergency is. All of those things have to be covered on an annual basis and have every single employee signed off. It's wild.
Well, if nobody has any questions, I thank you for your time and thanks for listening. You can always get a hold of either Katey or myself. You can call the Heartland Fabricare at 800-462-4732, or you can call Safety and Environmental Compliance at 877-302-5842. And we will answer the phone and do our best to help you out.
Yep.
So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, ladies. Appreciate your help.
Thank you,
Thanks so
Steve.
much.
Bye-bye.